All right, everybody, welcome to the pod, and things are just a little bit different this week. Josh McCuistion, our own, is out on the road, going all throughout Oklahoma, seeing the top talent in the state and looking maybe for some new faces that might impress. So instead of our usual studio show, we've put together something a little bit different. I had a chance to catch up with one of my favorite players to interview when he was at OU. That's former Sooners defensive back Zack Sanchez. Sanchez is currently working with his own trucking and logistics business back home in Texas, but he's also prepping to head back to the CFL this season. So he's still in the game as a football player, and he's also an often outspoken voice on social media about some of the issues going on with sports and race. And so Zach and I sat down and had a conversation recently where we looked back on that spring of 2015, and that was the spring of the SAE racist chant incident on campus. The team rallied around each other, decided to stay off the practice field and fight for social change. And that was a very turbulent time. So the current climate, something Sanchez is familiar with. We talked about what the team went through then and what they'll be going through now, and his faith that Lincoln Riley and even Ty Darlington, who went through that with him, would help, how they would help along the way. So they'll be able, in his words, to lead this program through this pretty turbulent time for young black men all across the country. Now, it's not an interview that's full of political rhetoric. It's just Sanchez talking about his experience as a young black athlete in this country. So his story and his viewpoint are something that I think everyone could benefit from hearing. And beyond that, we did hit on a couple of football topics from his days at OU, including that preseason battle between Trevor Knight and Blake Bell when it was time to move on from the Landry Jones era. And we also talked about that 2013 season. It was actually one of the best of the Bob Stoops era in terms of big wins at Notre Dame, and then Alabama, of course, in the Sugar Bowl to end the season. So we also got clarification on one of the most controversial moments from a bowl game during the Stoops era. What really happened between OU and Clemson and the bus incident before those two teams played in the college football playoff that year? Our conversation with Sanchez will be followed up by our weekly recruiting talk between Bob Prisbillo and Josh McCuistion. So enjoy this version of the pod, as we'll be back to our regular format soon. And without further ado, here's my conversation with Zack Sanchez, followed up by your recruiting report with Bob and Josh. And I was wondering if you could kind of take me back to, if you kind of remember the kind of how and when of when you first saw that SAE video? Like where you were even?
It was like a Sunday for us, and we were just, I think we were all just, it was just me and Tat lived together at the time.
Okay.
So it was just a Sunday, and I guess the video may have gone out that night, the night before, and I guess that Sunday when we had woke up, we had seen it.
Yeah, because it was like a Saturday night function or something they were doing.
Yeah. And it was just kind of like, I mean, it's, I wouldn't say I was surprised just because I'd gone in that house like my freshman year and knew off rip. Like I walked in that house 2 times, and within like 10 to 15 minutes of both times, I just knew like I got to get out of here before I get violent with one of these dudes. So it wasn't necessarily like surprising to me. It was just like, okay, now you dumbasses actually put it on film to where like people know who you truly are. Like some of the football guys that have been around them and gone in that frat house, I've kind of known the culture of how they are, and you know they try to get under your skin at times, but you know when you're there face to face, it's a whole different story. So for them to just out themselves the way that they did, I was just like, I don't know how stupid you can be. But it wasn't like necessarily just rage or anything like that. In the moment, it's just like, wow, you dumbasses finally just added yourself, like, to the world, like, because you know it blew up on a national scale. And, you know, I just remember having conversations. I think me, Taff, and Strike, and D. Brooks, we immediately met up, probably like a couple hours later, because, you know, Strike is a real passionate dude.
I remember his snap that was floating out there. It was just, you could tell how pissed he was.
Yeah, he was pissed off. And it's just because, like, you know, we had seen that. Like, we know who those type of kids were. Like, we were around them on campus and things like that. So it's frustrating. I guess I understand Strike's frustration with it, just because we got to walk past these dudes on a daily basis, and we have to be the bigger men. We have to be the cordial guys, when it would have been easy, super easy for us to just slap the taste out their mouth. At any, you know what I'm saying, at any instant.
Yeah, you knew they were shitheads. I mean, they just, those people exist.
And it's not necessarily all of the frat guys, because I was cool with a handful of them, but for a majority of them, it's just at that age, and you're just in college, and you really you're not even thinking about anybody else but yourself, and you're kind of just caught up in this mentality of, just a super egotistic, just a little shithead, so I wouldn't say maybe they have changed from that situation from a few years ago, but maybe they haven't. I'm not one to nail that on the head, but I just know, like, in that instance, man, I wasn't really shocked or surprised. I was just more like I said, like, y'all are that dumb for outing yourselves, and like now you're going to be brought to the light. So it was a crazy 24 hours, man.
Yeah, and I do feel bad that everybody's separated, because I know a lot of constructive things, a lot of things were said, a lot of things that, emotionally were said, and there was a lot of, just people trying to understand what was going on, and the team, trying to figure things out on their own. And I know you had people that were like, dude, we got to practice, like, and then you had other people like, no, this is bigger than that. But, it was because you guys were all on campus, you're getting ready to start spring football. It's a little bit different than what you're going through now. But just, you talked about that 24 hours. Was that really kind of when, had you kind of like had a full team meeting by that point, or was that like the coming week when all that stuff started happening?
I would say the first team meeting was on that, I want to say maybe that Monday, because that night we had like a leadership meeting. So like Ty, Trevor Knight, myself, Strike, Tap, Shep, Deron Neal, we all met at Strike's house. Because, Strike was on edge. Like, Strike wanted to take it to this dude's front door.
Yeah.
And me, I'm riding, so I'm like, shit, whatever you with, I'm with. So
yeah, I
was just kind of there. But Ty and Trevor and even really Shep came there and kind of like calm Strike down and myself. So I guess, that's exactly what they want you to do, this, that, and the third. So we just kind of started brainstorming on like, how do we change this shit, and how to like bring attention to people who may not think that it's going on, or maybe oblivious to the fact that it's going on. So, man, I want to say we were at Strike's house that night, probably till like 4 or 5 in the morning, like literally just talking and discussing things, like trying to get Ty and Trevor to understand, which those guys did right off the bat. Like Ty and Trevor, that's one thing I commend them about. They were always open to like just listening and hearing us out and understanding where we're coming from. So that night was just literally like brainstorming ideas, and I want to say maybe the next day is when we started organizing. Like, all right, we're gonna have a team meeting, and we had a full-on team meeting, and straight up, and that night is when we made the decision, like, we're not practicing.
That Monday night.
Some shit that first night that we had went to Strike's house, right? We're not practicing. And Ty and Trev kind of fought it for a little bit, but then they finally understood, like, okay, we're with y'all, we understand. So then we had the team meeting the next day with the whole team discussing. It got some arguments and things like that going back and forth, but it came to a point in the meeting where they were like, all right, like y'all are our leaders, so whatever y'all, whatever y'all decide is what we're going to back as a team. And to hear that from some guys that I would have never guessed, or guys that just really didn't say much. Some white teammates, they just literally told us, like, bro, whatever y'all want to do, we're going to stand with y'all. So it was good to, like, come together as that. And then, we went and met with the coaches that same day and told them, like, look, these are the demands, like, it's kind of our layout of what we want, and we will not be practicing until, some shit changes on this campus, or until these things happen. And it just kind of steamrolled from there, man.
Yeah.
And, Strike took the lead on it, man, and it was a huge movement. Like, it was a good thing.
How much did, there's so much that's gone on since then to now. I mean, especially the Colin Kaepernick situation and the kneeling, but you guys had instead of practicing, you'd lock arms, go out, on the field together, had media coverage there. People could see, what you were doing. How much did that help? I don't know, you guys come together. How meaningful was that just to be able to have a protest and have people recognize that? I mean, what is it about that I don't know that helps you heal is the right way, but to express yourselves? How does that help a team?
Man, it wasn't really even just like the media coverage of it. It was just like the meeting that team meeting that we had in there. It was probably like a good hour and a half, 2 hour meeting. And like I said, like there were heated moments, heated arguments. When some white players really didn't understand why we didn't want to practice. And some other black players, kind of taking offense to that. Like, what the hell do you mean? So to actually go through there and have those type of arguments and to come out of it with everybody on one accord was huge. And I think that did more for us going into that season than anything. But like the media coverage for athletes is great just because, we go there, as much as anybody wants to call us student athletes, you go, especially if you're a football player, you go there to play football and you go there to win championships. Like, yes, school is a huge, huge deal and it's very important, but, Oklahoma is what it is because of the football program. Like, it's period, point blank period, you want to make it. So, like, to see athletes in a light other than just running and killing each other on a Saturday night, I think it brings a lot of light to just being human, man. Like, and I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. Like, they think our job is just to play football and that we don't live in a regular reality like everybody else. So I think the media coverage and people seeing that shows like, oh, even though they are, as much as you want to call celebrities, in the college football world, they're regular human beings. Like, they go through we went through the same thing as just a regular black student or a regular black kid that lives in Oklahoma City or Norman. Like, we've experienced those things, so we know how that feels and how that makes us feel. So I think just having the media coverage and people seeing that, I think that's the biggest thing for me personally, is like showing people like, yes, we may be athletes, but at the end of the day, we are human beings and we have morals and we believe in things and we stand for things just like anybody else would.
I covering football, 20 years, following kids when they're in high school. I don't do it as much anymore, but I did it long enough to kind of, I think I said this, the first column I wrote about this was we all come from a bubble. Like, I came from small town Southwest Oklahoma. Didn't have, I think I had 2 or 3 black guys in my class, graduating class. Played football with them. Played basketball with them. Played sports with them. I don't think I ever really got to know them or anything about their lives, what they were going through. And then you start covering, young black kids, and you hear these stories, and you see, how much it means to get a college scholarship, and kind of the things they go through in their lives, and you're now in their bubble, and so you're not just you're only as wise as your experiences, I guess. So, it kind of takes that for people to have any empathy for somebody else that's different than them. So I guess I'm just kind of setting that out to ask you, like, when you see, and social media, I think is it's good in a lot of ways. It's also horrible in a lot of ways, and you're seeing some of that now. But how damaging is it, just personally, emotionally, to see that stick to sports crowd that's out there that man, this guy just doesn't give a shit about me?
Yeah, I mean, it's ignorant, man, but it's just reality. Like, and it's just something that like I've dealt with since, probably I got on campus, just because how involved I am on Twitter and like just dealing with different fans and things like that. But it gives the good fans and the ones that actually know you're a human being, it gives them a bad rap because of ignorant people like that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
And it's just tough. Like, it makes it tough for an athlete to really embrace his fans when he's kind of like half-stepping, like, why why should I be cordial to this person when, I'm just a kid that runs around with football and hits other people every Saturday. You know what I'm saying? So, but I try not to let, those ignorant folk, like, incite, like, how I think about, just the common fan or people that have treated me with respect and people that have backed me when I have stood up for things like that. So I've learned to just deal with, like, the ignorant ones and, I'll say slick shit back to them and, kind of just play around because that's just what they are. They're just ignorant people, man, and you can't really give them too much of your energy. Like, I don't think, and I've said this all the time, like, when I'm responding back to people, have interactions, especially, like, the ignorant ones, I'm never, like, I'm never red looking at my phone sending out a tweet. Like, you know what I'm saying? I can't never let them get me that mad about it. Like, yeah, I'll have, like, a little frustration or be annoyed with them, but I'm never just wish ill will and, like, just, you know what I'm saying, like, just really hate that person for being ignorant. The only ones that I really hate are just the blatantly racist ones. Like, those are the only ones that can really, like, get my blood boiling. But, just, like, ignorant comments and just, like, stick to football and things like that. It just kind of comes with the territory. Just because a lot of athletes, as much as they do speak out now, a lot of them still are afraid to speak out. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of a new thing, especially with social media. It's a new thing for athletes to have this voice and have these platforms the way that we do today. So it's just they're not used to seeing it. So now it's in their face and they don't like it. So it's just man, it's just ignorant stuff. You just kind of know what you're going to get into when you make certain statements or when you stand on something. So I don't really give too much effort into it, but I just know those type of people still exist, and that's why I still use my platform the way I do to, we need to weed out all these type of people. So they ain't doing nothing but outing themselves and showing us who they are.
Let me ask you this, because, I wrote some stuff. I gave out my phone number, which I thought was kind of stupid, but I did it anyway, and just said, hey, if you want to tell your story, let me hear from you. I got so many text messages that were just, some of them kind of broke my heart, but at the same time they were uplifting. I mean, one was a guy that his dad was white, his mom was black, and they married in Southeast Oklahoma, like in the 40s. And he grew up with racism his whole life. He's a doctor now, and he didn't want to go to undergrad at OU because this was like 87 or something, and he said the racial climate was pretty bad then. And he did end up coming back to go to medical school at OU to get his medical degree. And it's the stories like that, but it's like I almost, and tell me if you think I'm off base here, but I almost got the feeling, I mean, I heard from people in Minnesota, I heard from people in Montana, black people, and kind of the thing that I took from it is it was hard for them to share that, and they had to read something I wrote that made them feel comfortable enough to share that with me. It's almost like, you think a lot of black people kind of carry around guilt because they've been treated this way, and it makes them think like I'm partially at fault for this sometimes, to share their stories like that?
Definitely, man. I think that's definitely a heavy burden on a lot of people, especially just the feeling that, maybe people won't believe them, you know what I'm saying, or people really just won't care about it. And that's tough, man, because, and I think that's why I'm so eager to speak up, because I know it's people out there that their stories aren't being heard, or like you said, they just maybe feel like there's guilt, like they can't share it, because maybe it might stop future jobs or future professions for them. So I think that's definitely a big thing in the black community.
It's, I mean, is it also, I assume that it would be a little bit, you would feel a little bit dehumanized, because that's what they have been, a lot of people throughout their lives. It's, I would imagine it's a dehumanizing experience to go through racism on a regular basis, for someone to judge you or to feel a certain way about you because of the color of your skin.
Yeah, man. And it gets to a point where, people get numb to it. And they just, you know what I'm saying, they just don't feel it anymore. And I think that's like the worst part. And I even catch myself sometimes, like, just seeing different videos, like even the George Floyd thing, man. Like, the George Floyd video was just, like I watched it, and the first time I watched it, like I literally, I didn't feel nothing. Like I was just watching, I was like, damn, it's another video of one of us dying.
Yeah.
Then I went back and watched it again, and it was just, my stomach was just turning, like it hit me. So I can catch myself being numb to some things sometimes. I'm like, I shouldn't feel like that. Like, you know what I'm saying? I shouldn't be feeling like every other month it's a new video I'm gonna watch, and it's like, oh, you know what I'm saying? It's just the same cycle. Like, so I understand why people can feel that burden or feel dehumanized by it, because they're so used to seeing it, and it's so common. And I think we're finally at that turning point where, like, that shit doesn't need to be common anymore. Like, it's not something, you know, we should see every other month, or, you know what I'm saying, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a year on a national scale, because it's just like the ones that we are seeing, how many are we not seeing? You know, so it's just, it can make you dive into this whole rabbit hole, and it can drive you fucking crazy.
Yeah.
So it's tough, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, as media, you're always hearing from the crazy fans that, you know, if they get mad at you for saying, you know, somebody played bad or this or that. I mean, players could be that way too. So you do, like you were talking about, you do kind of have to build up a wall. You have to get some thick skin. But, you know, is if there is a message to, you know, young high school kids that are, you know, going to play in college, that are going to, you know, that visibility is going to ramp up, is there a part of you that wants to send a message to them about how to handle this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just, like, I even just telling the guys at OU now, it's like, just don't be afraid to stand on what you believe in, especially if it's something right. Like, standing on racism, like, shouldn't be a debate. You know what I'm saying? So, and that would just be my message, like, yes, stand for what you believe in, but also don't give them a reason to discredit you for anything you do. You know what I'm saying? So, like, that's, like, my thing for me is, like, when I was at OU, I knew don't get in trouble with the law. Don't ever have your name come up with any sexual assault, anything like that. Like, don't give anybody a reason to discredit you for standing up for something that's right. You know, because that'll be the first thing that they do. You know what I'm saying? That was just, like, my main thing. And it was, like I said, like, it was times where I was in that frat house, and I'm like, I had to tell them, like, bro, I got to go. Like, I'm about to get violent with some of these dudes. So I always, that's one thing, like, I prided myself on, is, like, don't put yourself in a situation to, you know what I'm saying, them to throw your name in the dirt, you know, from any legal trouble that you've had or anything like that. So when I stand on things, I stand on them firmly, because I don't have no skeletons. Like, you know, there's nothing you can look up on me, you know, from a college standpoint and be like, well, he was doing this, that, and third, and he wants to fight for this, you know. So, and that would be my biggest thing. It's just like, just don't put yourself in a situation for them to discredit you, because that's what they want to do. Like, they're going to do that so fast, faster than, you know, your post of standing up for racism will get up, so will your record. You know what I'm saying? And it's tough, like, because we don't really get the same second chances as maybe other people should, you know, or other people do get. So that would just be my biggest message. Don't be afraid to stand for what you believe in, and also don't put yourself in a situation to get your name dragged through the dirt.
That's awesome. Yeah. Can I ask you a question? How often growing up did a white person call you the N-word?
Man. More times than more times than should have happened, for sure. How many times did they get away with it? None, to be honest. But you know, it's the first thing that comes out of their mouth when they're angry or they feel embarrassed. So it's like you don't have the balls to say it to me when, you know what I'm saying, when you're not in a position of embarrassment or, you know, just feeling brave. Like, it was always some slick shit, either walking away or driving off. And, you know, and me going to school where I went to, it's, you know, it's black or white, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, if you're black, most of the kids that went to our school, you grew up in Fort Worth. And the kids that are white grew up in Keller. Like, so it's a different dynamic, right? And it's, you know, it's kind of crazy. But, you know, there was kids in high school that, you know, would try to get away with some slick shit and would get mad when, you know, they get punch in the mouth for it. But yeah, and then and then in college and shit like that, like hearing some fans and some opposing stadiums use it, it's just like, yeah, man, like West Virginia was a wild place, man. West Virginia was a wild place, but
I'm gonna tell you, not surprised. I'm gonna say not surprised.
Yeah, right.
A lot of overalls in those stands.
I was surprised when we were driving up and I was getting flipped off by 8, 9, 10-year-old kids. So I was like, oh yeah, this what type of vibe it weird. So, but I mean, it's I don't know. I guess it gives them some sense of power, until they get hit in the mouth. But I'm not the only person that's experienced, and I know somebody's been called it way more times than I have growing up. Just because, a lot of people don't really got the balls to say it in front of you. They say it to your face like that. So,
what would you like to see from this team this season, and just really all of college football, to continue continue forcing this issue? I guess on like you said, the people that don't want to hear it, that need to hear it.
Man, I know Ty's involved in the leadership of the team now, and, Chance and Justin, and some guys are doing some really good things, and Pat, they're doing really good things up there, man, and even getting things rolled out. So they have a plan of action, and I think I'm going to speak to them here soon. I know I'm gonna meet up with Chance before they get rolled into camp and stuff, and
awesome,
having conversations with them. So I'm definitely going to pick their brain, and help any way that I can. But I think they got some good things in store. But I just really just want to see, just address it. Don't be afraid. I feel like a lot of these institutions are afraid to address it. And it's no, don't be afraid. We need to talk about it. You need, to weed out these type of people in your institutions and, in your history. You got to teach the history of what really happened. The Tulsa riots thing is so crazy to me that it's not taught.
Yeah.
System like that. That blows my mind. How do you not teach that? So,
I had to leave the state to go play baseball somewhere else to know about it. It's crazy. Even this was in the 90s. I mean,
that's crazy to me. I think you can't hide the racism anymore. You got to expose it. And you got to understand this is actually what happened in this country. So that's the biggest thing for me is I just want to see more education on the real life Black experience and what has actually happened to Black people post slavery in this country. Yes, I think slavery is taught and it's kind of just skimmed over, but that was just one step of it. Now you get into things that the Tulsa riots that happened and the Jim Crow laws that happened and segregation, things like that, and you actually break it down and you educate people that like you said, come from rural towns who really don't know anything but their bubble and what they grew up in. So you got to educate these people and, and let them know this shit happened. And, every Black person you run across isn't a criminal. He's not trying to rob you. He's not trying to harm you. He's just another regular human being like you. Bad people come in all shapes, sizes, colors. It doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? But I just think the biggest thing that from these institutions that I just want to see is just the education on the history and the Black experience. Just make it evident. So there's no more hiding it. There's no more brushing it under the rug, but it's in your face, and it's something you need to talk about because it's definitely, if we don't talk about it and we don't discuss it, it'll never get fixed.
Seeing how Lincoln's handling this now, knowing that he was with you guys in 2015,
mm-hmm.
What have you thought about the way he's handled this?
I'm not surprised, man. That's just he's such a player's coach, man, and he actually listens and cares about his players. He's not just one of those coaches that blows air up their ass. He actually does. Because I remember when we went into the coaches meeting with them. This is Link been there for two and a half, not even 3 months yet.
Yeah.
And he told me Strike and Tap and Chef. He was just know I got y'all's back. Whatever y'all decide to do. I'm a coach, but I'm here for y'all. And I just distinctly remember that. And I think I had tweeted it a couple weeks ago, just telling those guys you got a coach that has your back. Do not be afraid to speak up, and use your platform. because Link was riding, like, he didn't know me. I think I had like a couple conversations before that, but it was for him to come out and tell me that it was huge. So it don't surprise me at all, like the stance that he's taking and, the direction of the program. Like, I just feel like they're getting ready to, to catapult into something that's really special.
It sounds like, you have a lot of faith in Ty being there too, seeing that he went through all that.
I definitely do. It's because he's such an understanding person, man. Like, he just knows how to listen. Like, you know what I'm saying? And that's the problem. And for a guy that's as intelligent as he is, those people aren't so quick to listen and actually understand other people's point of view.
Yeah.
But he's always been like that, though, man. He's just a caring dude, an understanding dude, and understands that, people come from different walks of life, and regardless of that, they should be treated with the utmost respect and the same, as anybody else. So I think they're in a really good hands having him there. Just the coaching staff as a whole, man. I think they got the right people in line, and obviously the players and what they're doing, and the steps they're taking, man. I think everything's rolling in the right direction.
Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? I mean, in terms of all the social injustice stuff that you want me to get out there, or you felt was important?
Man, for me, just from a personal thing, I just want people to understand, like, I'm not a racist. I don't hate white people. I hate racists. Like, that's the only thing I hate. I hate racists, and I hate people that try to hide behind a curtain that they're not racist. Like, I just stand on your racism. If you're racist, you're racist. So that's just the biggest thing with me, man. It's like, I trust me, I do not hate white people. Don't get it confused with me calling out racists, me calling out white people.
Yeah.
Sometimes they go hand in hand because some white people are racist, and that's just what it is, but it's not me hating white people. Like, so that's just like the biggest misconception I just want to get out there. Like, I don't hate white people. I'm not a racist. Like, I want shit to be normal. Like, I want you to treat me with the same respect I would treat you with if I never met you a day in my life. That's it for me.
I appreciate it, man. To me, one of the most fascinating things that I've ever covered is that quarterback battle in 2013, because it was so secretive. Like, and I think we all thought that Blake was the heir apparent, and everybody was kind of counting down, okay, Landry will be done, and then it'll be Blake Bell's team. He's so highly thought of, coming out of high school, and everybody and their dog wanted him. And legitimately, it was the first time that Bob came in there and announced a starter, and I was shocked. Like, I'd never made like a prediction like, oh, it's going to be this guy. Like, I just didn't know, and nobody really knew, and you'd heard all this stuff. I'm curious if you could, your memories of that preseason camp. There's always this talk about, Trevor Knight looks like Johnny Manziel out there. Like, he's just amazing in practice, and he's clearly the guy. But what was it like watching those two compete and playing against those two?
It was great, man. I think like that training camp for our class in particular was just like, it was like our coming out party. Because like Trevor stepped up that camp. That camp's, that was the year that I had earned my starting position. Strike emerged in that camp. Tap emerged in that camp. Shep took a next step in that, in that camp. Ty, came into, his leadership role on the O-line. So like, that camp was just like a big springboard for our class as a whole. And like Blake was a great, he was, I love B Bell, but like Trevor was just, he was on that camp. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like the Johnny Manziel comparisons they were warranted because he was dicing shit up that camp. And I think Blake kind of realized, I want to say probably like a week and a half, 2 weeks, Blake kind of realized that and kind of started like, okay, like, how do I help Trevor become a better quarterback for the team? You know what I'm saying? And he took on that role and played the role all season, and it came up huge for us in the Oklahoma State game. Like, yeah. But like Blake has always been that type of guy though. Like he just always wanted what's best for the team. Like, even just going to his position change the year after, it's like, bro, he just was one of those guys, like, whatever he needs to do to help the team win, he was going to do. And I think you got a taste of that with, his Belldozer package and things like that. So, but as just like a quarterback. I think he knew his type of play would wear his body down as the season went on, just playing like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think he kind of started realizing that, and he was like, well, shit, let me help mold Trevor into being a guy. And then whenever I'm called on, I know the system, I know I can play, so it'll be easy for him to make that transition. But yeah, man, that camp was just, that year was it was an interesting camp because it was kind of like the 2012 coming out party. So it was definitely a fun ass camp for all of us, and that season was a pretty good season.
I've always said this, of all the games that have been played in the Bob Stoops era, that game at Notre Dame, to me, is one of the best OU victories of all time. It had nothing to do with a championship or a college football playoff or anything like that, but just everything that happened in that game from the start with Frank and Corey.
Corey.
Yeah, I mean, the interceptions and I remember too, it was like, I know Gabe Eichert was pissed because he told me about this because I'd said something about Nix had dominated him the year before when they won in Norman.
Oh, yeah.
And he just kicked his ass that whole game. And, I mean, kicked somebody's ass like I'd never seen before. But, like, Blake getting, dehydrated and leaving and coming back, and even when Trevor Knight came in, he had like a 30-yard run. But just winning that game, it was one of the best football games I've ever watched an Oklahoma team play.
Yeah, no, that was a whole bunch of fun. Like, that's probably one of my favorite games that I played too. If not the favorite, definitely top two. We were just rolling. Like, we were really, really wrong. Like, if we don't slip up against Texas, ain't no telling like what happens that year. Because like we went into that game a little overconfident, kind of like how we always do against those cats when we're undefeated. Which I don't know why the hell we do, because it's the only game they get up for every damn year. But like I just think about it like beating them and then going undefeated against that Baylor team down there in Waco. I think it's a whole different outcome just with the momentum we would have built up.
Yeah.
But that season, like, I cherish that season. I love that season. Just because of the older guys that we had, having guys like Gabe Eichert, and then having Slick and Gabe Lynn. Yeah. And, guys like that to kind of help us catapult, like I said, our class into being, the leaders once they left. So it was a very important season, I think, for all of our careers. But, yeah, that Notre Dame game despite the field being horrible, it was a great game.
Well, yeah, and of course, Alabama. I mean, that was amazing to end the season. So,
yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time, like, we knew we were going to win that game. Like, it was never a doubt in any of our minds. Like, I remember, like, the night that they told, or like that I had seen on TV that we got Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. I text Gabe Lynn like, shit, you going out with a W because we're not losing to these dudes in your last game. And he was like, shit, you already know how I'm rocking. And we went out there and whooped their ass. Like, it was just from day one, just because of the, like, first of all, it's the hate that Coach Stoops had for the SEC.
Yeah.
And then just the hate that we just hearing, you hear about the SEC, this, that, and the third. It's just like, bro, like, if we played high school offenses every week, we'd be a dominant defense too. Like, so it was just one of those points where we were just annoyed with it. So, yeah, man, that was just a great year all in all. Like, it was a really good year.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an Oklahoma year, but there was some really high. I mean, Trevor got hurt against West Virginia, and you back and forth with quarterbacks, and I mean, it was definitely a lot better than the next year, which is one I think everybody wants to forget.
What year? I don't know what year you're talking about.
2014, Russell Athletic.
I don't remember that year. Taking out of my memory.
I know Josh Heupel is never going to talk to me after that game because I asked him if he thought he coached his last game after it was over. He did not like that question.
Yeah, it was. Crazy thing is, we all almost left after that game. Like, Strike was contemplated coming out, Tap was, and if they would have left, I would have been right behind them. So, luckily we stuck it out, though, man. Luckily we stuck it out.
It was worth it. Yeah, 2015 was worth it.
Yeah. It definitely was.
Hey, one thing I didn't ask you, by the way, can you tell me the real story about Clemson and Charles Tapper and the bus?
Man, so we're leaving, I want to say maybe a luncheon, and I know Tap had got into it with Shaq on Twitter or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And you know, they were going back and forth. So we're getting on the elevator, and you know, they're walking, I guess, because there's only one elevator. So they're walking towards the elevator, and you know, they're talking shit. So the door starts to close, and Tap opens it. Tap opens the door straight up, and was like, "So what's all that shit y'all were talking?" And all of a sudden, you know what I'm saying? So like, and we're all right there. So I'm like, "Oh shit, here we go." And Tap's like, "Yo, so what's all that shit you all was talking, this, that, and the third?" And all of a sudden, like, there's no more shit talking. And, you know, their coaches come or whatever, and, like, trying to, like, get those guys back. And as soon as their coaches come, the shit talking starts again. So, like, man, whatever. Like, we know what type of dudes y'all are or whatever. So we get down. We get on the bus. You know, and they're walking out right there.
This is from the luncheon?
Yeah, from the luncheon. Nobody ever got on the bus. Shaq never got on the bus and was threatening nobody, because me and Tap both sat at the front and was waiting. You know, literally was a Tap. Like, Tap was so high, he was just waiting for what it is, you know, to give him a reason. But all of a sudden, there's two straight troopers by our bus door, so nobody's leaving the bus.
Yeah.
And then Bob comes on and gets on our ass about it. But, yeah, the whole shit that he got on the bus and was false. Could it be more false?
So the elevator was actually where all the action happened.
The elevator was shit, and Tap, like, literally, Tap's big ass stopped the elevator door and was like, "So what's all that shit you was talking?" And
now, was he in the elevator, or the elevator was closing on them?
No, that we were in the elevator.
Okay.
So the door was closing, and Tap had heard them coming. You know, I think somebody had said some slick shit. So Tap grabs the elevator door, opens it right back up, and steps out. I was like, "So what's all that shit y'all was talking?" Blah, blah, blah. You know, and then their coaches come and, you know, they get all rowdy again. So that should have, them jumping on the bus had never, ever happened. And never would happen, especially when if me and Tap are on the bus. Like, it would have came to blows if that was the case. Like, we're not going for none of that shit. I promise you that. Nobody got on the damn bus.
I think everybody was just so heated they wanted that to be a huge story. Like, it just became a fishtail.
Like, they were on side of the bus, you know, talking shit and doing that and the third, but nobody got on the damn bus. Come on, man. We're not going for none of that.
Well, man, I really appreciate it. Yo, go ahead.
It's actually funny because I know Shaq. Like, me and Shaq Lawson had, like, you know, after the draft and stuff, we all became cool, like, because we all trained in Arizona.
Oh, okay.
So it was funny because right after the game, like, or like a week later, we're all together, like, working out, living in the same apartment complex, going out together. And, you know, and they squashed it and shit. And it was like, bro, you know, they try to say that you got on the bus and were talking shit to us. And he laughed about it, and we laughed about it. I'm like, yeah, you know that shit would never happen. Maybe we just kind of went about our business. Like, we were just cool again. But, you know, shit gets blown out of proportion, hearsay.
All right, so there is our conversation with Zack Sanchez. And I tell you what, I can't thank him enough for opening up on the pod about the things he's been through in his life, dealing with racism, and just sharing his thoughts with others about dealing with things like this on a daily basis. And for me, kind of what I took out of it is, through all of the things that Zach's gone through, it's like what he said about the shut up and play crowd. Some bad fans don't keep him from focusing on the fact that there are good people out there who did root for him on Saturdays, and they still cared about him as a person. Because I do think that we get caught up focusing on the jerks and the ignorant, and I am just as guilty as anybody. I let myself do that way too much by paying attention to the crap I see on social media, and that's a tough way to live life. And I think we can all do more to embrace and celebrate and just acknowledge that there are good people out there. Now it's time for Bob and Josh to break down the latest out on the recruiting trail.
Josh McCuistion, of course, now known as Houston's own, but returned to his roots, his OK Preps roots throughout this week with a 4-day tour. Josh, I think we'll go day by day here in a second, but I think we got to start with any notable OU targets. And if it's not commits, it's some of their top targets on the board for 2021, 2022. Let's start with today. You make it out to Beggs. Of course, you go to Beggs. It's all about Kendal Daniels. What did you see from him, the 2021 safety / linebacker recruit #1? prospect within the state for 2021, and where does OU stand at this juncture?
With so many of these guys that I've seen this week, I've seen big jumps in development, whether it's, they look a little quicker, they look a little bigger, whatever it may be. With Kendal Daniels, it was really, you could tell he was more comfortable as a football player. Like, he's making calls. He's doing things that show me he's learning within that Beggs defense. I know people may not think that's a big deal, but this is a guy that hadn't played a lot of football. I mean, this is a guy still learning really the ropes of all of it. So I like what he's doing. He seems like he's taking on a leadership role of what looks like another really good Beggs team. I mean, a team that should be one of those 4, 5, 6 contending teams for a state title at that level. So, I mean, they are set for another big run. And, as far as Oklahoma, the thing I can say that was notable, because I didn't really get a chance to sit and talk with him after practice because I had to move on to Broken Arrow, but what I can say is he literally parked next to me in the lot, got out of his car, and I know he was wearing his OU kind of lanyard thing, his that had his keys on it and everything like that, but I'm pretty sure he was also wearing an OU sweatshirt. So I don't know how much you want to read into things like that, but it's also not nothing. So, I mean, I still like where OU is. I just get the impression talking to really people around the situation that he's just very low-key with all this. This is not a guy that feels rushed to make a decision or is going to feel pressure. Like, he is just going to take his time and go through it at really his own pace.
Well, Josh, I definitely want to get into the 2023 class because that group has been exploding here throughout this entire week. But we'll go 1 year earlier. We'll go to 2022 here with Gentry Williams out at Booker T, someone you've liked for a long, long time. And now as we get closer, is this someone who can legitimately be the next in-state 5-star kid?
I think he absolutely can be. I mean, this is a guy that, when you look at 5-stars, you're talking about guys with unique traits. I mean, they are going to be a little different than the other guys. And Gentry Williams is a guy that it's not, I mean, he's got a chance to be an Olympian with his speed. That's how special he is. This isn't just he's fast like a lot of guys are fast. He is absurdly fast. And I keep going back to this play that I saw him make on Monday where he's running a vertical route and the corner is actually in pretty good position. And rather than trying to fight through him to get to the ball that his quarterback's going to throw to him, Gentry basically takes a step to his right, accelerates, goes around the corner. Like, it looked like he was, like, turning a corner on the street. Like, he just went around the speed bump and then got to the ball and scored a touchdown. Like, I mean, as a cornerback facing a guy with that kind of talent and that kind of speed, I don't know how you deal with that. Like, what do you do with that scenario? If the quarterback puts it where where Gentry can catch it, how do you defend that? Because you can't run with him. And if you can't even get in his path to slow him down, that's just, that's like Tyreek Hill stuff. That's just incredibly dangerous. And the thing that I also love about Gentry is this is a guy that really has a lot of work to do. I mean, I know that can sound like a negative, but he has so much room to grow as a player. A guy that started for 2 years at a great program like Booker T, he hasn't even scratched the surface of what he can be once he gets into the weight room and starts developing and getting bigger and faster. There is just so much room for growth with him, and that's why I think he is the best chance the state has had since Gerald McCoy to have a 5-star.
We've been talking about these targets here, Josh, but this is the first time I got to see one of those commits. Got to see Jordan Mukes out at Choctaw, someone a lot of people are curious about. Is this a reach by OU? How big of a project is he? Now that you've seen him in person and got to really watch him work, what are your overall thoughts?
What surprised me, Bob, is how similar he is in a lot of ways to Kendal Daniels. There's a lot of comparison there. Jordan is bigger in frame than I thought he was. He is a big, broad-shouldered, really impressive kid. But at the same time, he is a better athlete than I thought he was. I thought in his junior tape, he would show flashes of good things, but he could look awkward. Being that big and long, like sometimes it's hard for their footwork to be very good, but you can tell it's something he's worked on and he's getting better at. His transitions are much better. And the thing I really liked is Choctaw's doing a lot of stuff with him where he's going to show as a corner, and then right before the snap, he'll drop off and flip with the safety, and he'll play with some safety responsibilities. So they're going to do some really interesting stuff with him that I think is going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I think it also will fine-tune his game a lot. I came away very impressed with Jordan Mukes. I think he is going to be a guy that really, to me, it's about finding the right fit for him because he is big, he is fast, he is athletic. You can see it on tape that he is willing to be physical. It's about Alex Grinch finding out what the best role for him is and really tailoring it to his skill set. But this is a guy, he could play safety, he could play nickel, and I even think he's big enough that if those didn't work out, he could be a Robert Barnes scenario where you say, okay, we're going to put 20 more pounds on him and see if he can play some outside linebacker for us. Like, he is that big of a guy. And, I mean, like I said, from what the film I saw as a junior to what I saw physically as going into that senior year, this is a guy that his body is rapidly developing. He's getting bigger, and I think somebody told me yesterday they had measured him in at like 205. I mean, so that gives you an impression of how big this guy is. He'd already be one of OU's biggest defensive backs right now.
One of the most fun parts of these trips is you go in, there's a name or two you want to see, and then there's two or three that just pop up out of nowhere and just kind of have fun. What's it been like seeing some of this 2023 class?
I want to give a little shout-out to our guy Eddie because Eddie has been like, man, I feel like this 2023 group is special, and I am the same way, but I almost always feel that way this early on, and I get way too ahead of myself. And then I look back, and I'm like, man, I love that kid as a sophomore. And then I see him as a senior, and I'm like, I don't know. But as I look around the state, I mean, the guys I saw this week, I mean, you go to Del City with Jaden Foreman, who picked up an offer today. You've got Kenigel Thomas there, Jacoby Johnson at Mustang, Caden Jones at Mustang. You've got, I went and saw Morgan Pearson from Ardmore Plainview that nobody is talking about yet, but that guy I'd be shocked if he's not a 20 offer kid by the time his senior year rolls around. He is a big, impressive athlete. And you just go down the list there, Jonathan Ashford. I saw Caden Stanton today at Beggs. The numbers keep getting, every time I'm kind of like, okay, these are the guys. You get something else that throws in the mix. Booker T's got several 2023 guys, including Miles T's younger brother, Micah, that's a really good young player. It's got a chance to be maybe the best group I've seen since that 06 group that had McCoy and Gresham and that whole crew. And I've said that before. I mean, we're going to have to see how these guys develop, how they continue to go, because the class I thought that might be the case for was the Justice Hanson, Devin Thomas class. Well, obviously, Devin Thomas, after his sophomore year, was never that same guy again. So you've got to see how these things play out. But there are a lot of players that have not only started to pick up offers and a lot of attention, but they are guys that have a chance to be elite national type recruits.
The in-state products have definitely fared well for OU here throughout recent years, but one position here lately where there's been nothing, it has been quarterback. You have to go back to Casey Thompson 2018, and that you could argue how legit that was throughout the process, but could we perhaps see Lincoln Riley going to Choctaw for a 2023 quarterback here in the future?
I think it's possible, and he's a guy. Steel Waffle is a guy that I saw on tape probably 2 or 3 months ago, kind of by happenstance, and just really, really liked what I saw. And having a chance to go see him in person, physically, he is a dead ringer for Justice Hanson. About 6'2.5", 6'3", real physically developed, probably 205 already, 210, big physical guy, can run, is willing to take on hits. Now, I mean, obviously, at the practice I was at, it's no real contact. But, I mean, you could tell he was a guy that he gets ahead of steam. He's going to look for contact. A lot like Justice in that way. The other comparison I'm going to make is going to make OU fans cringe a little bit, but it's not because the player lacked talent. Watching Steele on Wednesday, I saw a guy throwing from all these different arm slots, and, he kind of would wing it side-armed or over the top. He could really mix it up, and it didn't seem to affect velocity or really his accuracy too much. And as a guy that is natural when the play breaks down, he reminds me a lot of Rhett Bomar in that way. That same kind of chaotic, like just there's a lane to throw the ball, almost at my hip. I'm going to do it that way. And Rhett was that way. And I see some of that in Steele Waffle. So it's really interesting. I've heard comparisons made before where some quarterbacks are almost like a symphony. It's all moving in real direct terms. That what they're doing. They kind of are very deliberate about the way they do. And then, a guy like that is almost more like a rock star. Like he may go on a solo. You don't know what he's going to do or how he's going to accomplish it, but it's interesting to watch. And he was really impressive yesterday when things would break down, when things weren't the way they were supposed to be, were some of the best throws he made all day. And if he can learn to just work within the offense when he doesn't have to ad-lib, I think you could be talking about a guy that's a elite Power 5 type quarterback.
And going away from the tour just for a second and to kind of wrap things up here, Monday night, well, you had a bunch of commits and they were tweeting like crazy the letter O, and you got to think that means something. You have a coordinated attack like that. Something's going on. We're now a week away from Caleb Williams, July 4th, but perhaps there could be more than just Williams on July 4th.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows we're all on alert for Caleb Williams. Got to keep an eye on whatever he's going to do. Hopefully we can still have some time with fireworks for our family. We don't know. But it sounds more and more like, and I posted something in a notes thread earlier this week, it sounds very much like something big is cooking along with Caleb Williams. I think, and what I've heard, I'm not even going to try to hide it. I've talked to the player in question, kind of reached out to me and let me know that something was going to happen. So I fully expect OU to be landing two very high caliber recruits on the 4th of July. So this is going to be maybe the moment, like we've talked about it, and we thought, okay, if Caleb Williams gets on board, then maybe things can start happening. I think that's what you're about to see. I think July could be a very, very good month for Oklahoma because, like I said, it's easy for people to kind of have these rumors and beliefs, Caleb Williams is recruiting this guy and that guy. Well, if Caleb Williams gets on board, then you get to have the direct conversation. And players don't have to wonder, like, well, if he is selling me on Oklahoma, why isn't he on board with Oklahoma? Why isn't he already committed? That conversation ends, and he gets to really sell. And I think that's what you're going to see really happen unless he was to pull a massive surprise on the 4th of July, which I just do not see happening. So, yeah, I think things are trending in a very good way. We'll kind of have to see how it plays out. I certainly don't want to ruin anybody's moment, but I do think OU fans are going to have a little bit extra to celebrate on the 4th of July.
And then we'll get you out of here with this question. We'll have to ask it again next week. Over under, we're on July 4th, over under 2.5 commits on that day itself.
I'm probably leaning to the under right now. And it's only because this close to it, I feel like I would have heard more names. I would have heard more if something was truly imminent. Now, maybe a guy, he kind of hears something's happening and he says, okay, I want to get on this too. I want to be part of this big day. We're going to make it a, historic day for our class or however they want to look at it. So I just kind of the mind that if something was coming together, it would be about now that guys would start making those plans and you would start to hear those rumors. And maybe we still will. But right now, I am only aware of 2 guys looking very likely for Oklahoma. So we'll see where that goes. Now, I do want to mention something because I didn't mention this to you that we should talk about this, but there's been a lot of chatter about Isaiah Coe for a while. I finally have had some conversations with people. It sounds like at this point, Isaiah Coe is a part of Oklahoma's class. Now, I still get the impression that has room for movement down the line, but I think for now, he is going to be part of the class. They'll see what happens with Marcus Burris. They'll see what happens with Kelvin Gilliam, and they'll kind of go forward and making decisions they need to make, going forward. But I think ultimately Oklahoma did something that makes a lot of sense and just said, are we ever really going to have too many good defensive linemen? Is that really a sentence we can say? And I think they're going to let things play out. And if they get into a situation where they have to make some hard choices, well, then they'll make some hard choices. But I just don't think that is something they are bound to right now, and are going to say no way to a player that they clearly like a lot.
And since you brought up Co, you feel this is this a reflection of anything with Burris and Gilliam, or the one thing not go with the other yet?
I think it is just, because we've seen these situations in years past, Bob, and we've talked about them on the pod, we've talked about them on the board, where OU would pass on a guy they could have taken and said, "Oh no, we've got this guy, and we're waiting on him," and they end up with neither. And I think Oklahoma is saying we're not going to be left holding the bag again. If we want to be the one that's in control of the choices come, November, December. We don't want to have to try to sell a kid when maybe he doesn't want to be here, and then we have to come back to the guy we turned down and try to explain why that's okay and not a problem. I've said it for a while. I understood this side of the argument. At the same time, I think it's clear. We still, I think this week what kind of sparked it for me to recheck on things is you had Calvin Thibodeau retweet his commitment announcement finally after 2.5 weeks now. So I think that was an indication that maybe the idea had changed. But at the same time, Lincoln Riley still hasn't done it to my knowledge. So that's unusual. Now, it's so far in the past. Maybe it's just something they've moved beyond and they're not going to make a big thing of it. Whatever. There's 1,000,001 explanations to why that could be a completely reasonable outcome. But at the same time, I think it's clear there was some trepidation on how this was going to get handled. So we'll see we'll see what they do going forward. And I think if Marcus Burris and Kelvin Gilliam are to want to get on board, and I think OU is the clear leader for Burris, and I think they're right there with Penn State for Kelvin Gilliam. And if they were to get both those guys, then maybe this still gets shaken up a little bit. But for now, Isaiah Coe is a guy that, we need to put on our commitment list. We're going to have to go forward with that and then kind of just continue to monitor the situation.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's special edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast. Let us know what you thought. Maybe we can mix in some more of these interview-centric podcast episodes in the future, and maybe I've got some other ideas as well. You never know. As always, we appreciate you listening. We look forward to a 2020 football season, and next week we'll be talking to you as players are reporting to campus for voluntary workouts. Until then, thanks for listening to another edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast from Soonerscoop.com.